Okay, good evening. Continuing on with the Gemaras in Meseches Shabbos, Daf Pei Ches. The Gemara then talks about the fact, it quotes a pasuk in Tehillim about that the earth, Eretz Yora Vishakta, the earth was afraid, and then the earth calmed down. And the Gemara asks, Im Yara Lama Shakta, Vim Shakta Lama Yara. If it was afraid, then why was it calm? If it was calm, why was it afraid? Ella, the Gemara explains, Betchila Yara, initially the earth was afraid, Ulipsof Shakta, and then subsequently it calmed down. Veloma Yara, and why was the earth afraid to begin with? Kideresh Lakish, as Reish Lakish taught. The Amar Reish Lakish, Mai Dichsiv, Vayi Erev, Vayi Voker Yom Hashishi. What is the meaning of the pasuk by creation? It was evening and it was morning the sixth day. Hey Yisera Lomali. Why does the pasuk emphasize Hashishi, the sixth day? Melamed, it teaches us Shehisne HaKadosh Baruch Hu Ma'aseh Bereshis, that Hashem made a condition with creation. Va'amar lahem, and Hashem said to creation, Im Yisrael mikablen es HaTorah, that if the Jewish nation accepts the Torah, atem eskaimen, you will continue to exist. Vim lav, and if not, ani machzir eschem letohu vavohu, I will return you to a state of tohu vavohu. Tohu vavohu, of course, is the state that's described at the beginning of Parshas Bereshis, that before Hashem declared, Yehi or, let there be light, it says that there was a state of tohu vavohu, which is usually translated as emptiness and void. It's not exactly clear there's what tohu vavohu means. So I saw that the Shem Mishmuel brings down a question in the name of his father, the Avnei Nezer. And he says as follows. He says, tohu vavohu, that state, that confused, mixed up state, that was also something that was created by Hashem. And if we're taught that the entirety of creation was made by Hashem using Torah as a blueprint, so tohu vavohu also emanated from that blueprint. And if so, had Klal Yisrael refused to accept the Torah, then why does it say that things would go back to the state of tohu vavohu? Tohu vavohu might be a confused and mixed up state, but there's still some sort of an existence. Why didn't the Gemara say that Hashem said that if you're not going to accept the Torah, you're going to go back to absolute, complete, and utter nothingness? So I want to share with you my understanding of what the Avnei Nezer says to answer this question. I want to explain to you as follows. What is that state of tohu vavohu? So the Chalban, in his Sefer on Bereshis, when he speaks about Parshas Noach, he essentially explains that tohu vavohu is sort of like a state of entropy. That we live in a world in which things are very ordered, right? I have this Sefer. The Sefer is not just a random bunch of molecules floating through the air, but these molecules have been ordered. Nature works in a more or less orderly fashion. But before Hashem said, Yehi or, let there be light, and in a similar vein, before the Torah came into existence, there was a very tohatic state, a state of tohu. That existence was of things that were completely unordered, floating around. In Kabbalistic terms, it's what the Arizal refers to as the Olam HaTohu. Before the Shem Mahachodesh came out to straighten things out, when you had all of the 10 Spheros in a row, because they were not relating to one another. Everything in existence sort of like existed on its own plane, not in relationship to anything else. As opposed to, again, if we take this Sefer, the Shemi Shmuel as an example, all of the molecules that make up this Sefer now are connected to and relating to each other at this very moment. So just like the light that Hashem shone at the time of creation, the function of that light was to start bringing order to things. The water receded and the earth came forth, and then plants came into existence, animals, and eventually human beings. That was a gradual state from complete disorder to order. In a spiritual sense, the spiritual lack of order continued for more than another 2,000 years until the Torah was given at Har Sinai. Because the function of Torah in a ruchnius, in a spiritual sense, is to bring order to the spiritual world, to take the spiritual world, as we said beforehand, the spheros, and to move them from a state of confusion, a lack of connection, a lack of relationship, and to order them in a way of relationship. And the absence of the Torah, it wouldn't have had to mean that all of existence would cease to come into being, but it was the order and relationship within existence, which is reflected in the Torah, which would have come to an end. So that's what I believe is how the Avnei Nezer wishes to explain the answer to his question. That when Hashem threatened that if Klal Yisrael does not accept the Torah, the world will go back to Tohu Vavohu, he meant not that the world will cease to exist, but in any sort of an orderly fashion, as we see the world today, that's what Hashem was threatening, that would cease to exist if Klal Yisrael would not agree to accept the Torah. The next Gemara speaks about the fact that Klal Yisrael, when they received the Torah at Har Sinai, angels came down and tied 2 crowns on each Jewish person. And unfortunately, after they subsequently worshipped the Egel Hazahav, the golden calf, the Malachim came and took them away. And the Gemara makes a comment, Amar Rav Chama Bar Chanina, Bechorev To'anu, in Chorev, that's where Har Sinai was. That's where they put on these crowns, and Bechorev Parku, and in Chorev they removed the crowns. And turning once again to Rav Kook in Ein Ayah, Rav Kook explains as follows, that when a person initially finds himself in a state of a very powerful light and clarity of ruchnius, of spirituality, and then subsequently darkness comes and overcomes the person, that which is creating the darkness is not something else different than that which created the light initially, but rather it's those ideas and concepts which initially created the light are now creating the darkness. Because when things were going good and a person was in a state where he was able to relate to the light, that very light, those very great spiritual concepts, shine a light before him very powerfully. But then, when that very same person starts to fall down, It's those lights which become utter and total confusion for him. It's the holiness itself which he had previously experienced now creates a state where he's feeling all confused because of that splendor and shine which has been removed from him. It's the fact that he had the great stature to begin with. That's why now he feels its lack so greatly and strongly. That's why the Gemara says, Bechorev To'anu, that by Har Sinai, that's where they put on the crowns, because that's when they stood at the pinnacle of what a human being is capable of achieving, and that no society previously had ever been capable of reaching those heights. As the pasuk says in Tehillim, Ani amarti Elohim atem uvnei elyon kulchem. I say that you are gods and you are all lofty people. But then, when they worshipped the Egel Azav and they fell from that lofty perch, they were aware of what they had been. They were very well aware of what they could be. And therefore, they felt extremely acutely the lack of that beautiful shining light that had been upon them previously. It was that stature that they had, the accomplishment they had had. Now, when it was gone, that's what was pouring a tremendous amount of darkness upon them. And so it will remain for a person until he gets the light, the healing light that encompasses healing from all illnesses. Namely, he says, the light of tshuva, ha'omed achar kaslenu. Thank you very much for joining again this evening. And Amir Tzashem, we will share some more ideas tomorrow night.